They say aging is about losing things: strength, beauty, memory, and often the love for yourself. But I've discovered that's not true. What we lose most with age isn't possessions or abilities, but the habit of looking at ourselves with tenderness, of recognizing ourselves as someone worthy of care and respect. And I tell you this because I've seen it time and time again in people who, when they reach maturity, feel their time has passed, that all that's left is resignation to loneliness or dependence. I'm Gabriel, and I've been studying and practicing Stoicism as a philosophy of life for more than 15 years. I've guided hundreds of people around the world to live with more wisdom, virtue, and courage, and I know that one of the deepest battles we face in old age isn't against the changing body or a world that forgets us, but against our own inner voice that convinces us we no longer deserve love. That voice must be disarmed with patience, with humor, and with great clarity. That's why today I want to share with you 15 practical and wise tips to learn how to love yourself in old age. These aren't pretty sayings or quick fixes, but concrete steps that transform the way you live day by day. From how you speak to yourself, to how you set boundaries, how you treat your body, and how you rediscover your purpose. Through practical philosophy, Stoicism, and the spirituality that sustains us, we'll walk this path step by step so you can stop feeling invisible and start living again with dignity, serenity, and fulfillment. Let's begin. Number 1. Breaking the myth of it's too late. Have you ever caught yourself thinking your time has already passed? That idea that if you didn't do it in your 30s or 40s, there's no point in trying now. It's a belief that runs deep because society has repeated to us that old age is synonymous with giving up, with resignation, with depending on others. But the funny thing is, that same society is full of examples of people who began their greatest work in later life. The question is, why couldn't you do the same? I want you to think of your life as a garden. For decades you planted, watered, cared for it, endured storms and droughts. Now, maybe you find yourself facing the false idea that the soil can no longer give fruit. But the truth is, a second bloom is possible. Different, calmer, more selective, yes, but with a deeper fragrance. That bloom requires a shift in perspective, and that shift begins today. When I began practicing Stoicism, one of the quotes that struck me most came from Epictetus. It's not what happens to us, but what we do with what happens to us. I remember reading it not in some solemn book, but in a moment of my life when I thought I had wasted years following a path that didn't fulfill me. That phrase hit me hard because it helped me understand that the past doesn't get the final word, that what truly matters is the decision you make today. The same goes for you. It doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, or older. The only thing that carries weight is what you choose to do with this moment. I invite you to do a simple life inventory. Take a sheet of paper and write 2 columns. In the first, list what you feel you can no longer do the way you used to. In the second, list what you can now do with more freedom, experience, and wisdom. You'll discover the second list is not only more real, it's your source of strength. Maybe you don't have the speed you once did, but you do have the calm to observe without rushing. Maybe your body tires faster, but your spirit knows better what's truly worth giving yourself to. At this point, let me give you a practical metaphor. Imagine you're a craftsman with an old blade. If you try to cut wildly without sharpening it, you'll only get frustrated. But if you take the time to sharpen that tool, you cut with precision and almost no effort. That's how your life is now. It's no longer about chasing after everything, but about sharpening your focus, your time, and your energy so you invest them in what truly matters. Isn't it curious how the myth of it's too late only shows up when it comes to growth or self-care, but never when it comes to carrying other people's burdens? For sacrifices, it always seems you still have to endure. But for your well-being, you quickly hear, it's not the time anymore. It's time to flip that trap on its head. This isn't about denying your age, it's about embracing it with the certainty that you can still reinvent yourself. I want you to close this first reflection with a clear image. You, standing in front of a mirror, not to criticize what time has changed, but to recognize what is still blooming and what is yet to bloom. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that it's never too late to open yourself again like a second spring. And that, perhaps, is the most radical act of self-love you can give yourself. Number 2. How you talk to yourself when no one's watching. If you want to know how much you truly love yourself, don't measure it in gifts, in self-care routines, or even in what you show in public. Measure it in how you speak to yourself when you're alone, when you make a mistake, when no one else hears that inner voice that never stops. That voice can be your executioner or your ally. And the strange thing is, we were almost never taught how to train it. We grew up with harsh words, with criticisms we repeated like an echo, and by the time we reach this stage of life, that voice often turns into a cruel judge reminding us of mistakes, aches, and losses. But it doesn't have to be that way. It happened to me for years. I remember a time when every morning, looking in the mirror, the first thought that came was, I don't recognize myself anymore. I'm not who I used to be. That phrase weighed on me like a backpack full of stones. Until one day I decided to change it, not with cheap optimism, but with an honest question. What part of me is still here, steady, waiting to be acknowledged? And it was incredible how, just by changing that question, the way I treated myself throughout the day changed too. Stoicism gave me a simple but powerful tool, the triple filter for my thoughts. Before letting an internal judgment settle in, I run it through 3 questions. Is it true? Is it useful? Is it kind? If it fails in any of the 3, it doesn't deserve to live in my mind. And I want to invite you to do the same with your inner dialogue. Think about how many phrases you repeat to yourself that aren't really true, that don't help you at all, or that are so harsh you'd never say them to someone you love. Why then allow them to take root in your own heart? A practical exercise you can start today is the shelter phrase. Find a short sentence that can hold you when your inner judge raises its voice. It can be something as simple as, I treat myself with respect, or my peace comes first. Write it on a note and place it on your mirror, on the fridge, next to your bed. Train your mind to get used to hearing a different voice, one that builds instead of destroys. I know it might sound strange, even uncomfortable, because for decades you learned to demand from yourself and judge yourself harshly. But remember, this isn't about tricking yourself with pretty words. It's about choosing thoughts that are as real as they are useful. If you manage to install that compassionate voice within you, every stumble becomes a lesson, every wrinkle a testimony, every silence a refuge. Let me ask you directly, what harsh phrase do you usually repeat to yourself when you make a mistake? If you can recognize it and replace it with a shelter phrase, you've already taken a huge step towards self-love. In the end, the way you speak to yourself when no one's watching defines the way you walk when everyone is. And believe me, that inner change is noticeable, it's felt, and it radiates, even without you saying a single word. Number 3. Setting boundaries without guilt. Here we step into delicate territory, because if there's one thing I've seen over and over again in the lives of many older people, it's the difficulty of saying no without feeling like they're letting someone down. We're talking about adult children constantly asking for favors, grandchildren needing care you can no longer give at the same pace, partners demanding your attention as if you were their full-time nurse, and even friends or neighbors who get used to you always being available. And of course you feel that if you say no, you'll come across as selfish, ungrateful, or unloving. But you know what? There's no such thing as self-love without clear boundaries. I remember a conversation with a 70-year-old woman who confessed that she was caring for her grandson 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday, because how could I say no to my daughter? As she spoke, her eyes looked so tired, but what struck me most was the guilt she carried for even considering the idea of setting a limit. And I asked her something very simple. If your body breaks down from this overload, who will take care of your grandson then? The silence that followed spoke louder than any advice. That's when she realized that sometimes saying no is the greatest act of love, because it protects what you can give without destroying yourself in the process. Stoicism explains this well through the pillar of justice, giving each what belongs to them. And that includes giving yourself what belongs to you. If you strip yourself of peace, health, and energy, you're being unjust to yourself. Saying no calmly isn't selfish, it's justice. I want to propose a simple framework for setting boundaries without guilt. 3 steps. First, clarity about what you can and cannot give. Second, communicate it with serenity, without endless justifications or elaborate excuses. Third, stand by the calm consequence of your decision, even if others don't like it. That's how respect is built. Let me dramatize a short scene. Your son comes and says, "Mom, can you watch the kids all afternoon?" You take a deep breath and reply, "I can't today. I need to rest. Tomorrow morning I can help you for a couple of hours." No shouting, no arguing, no over-explaining. You simply set your boundary calmly. The world doesn't fall apart because of that no. And the curious thing is, over time, others learn to respect your space because you started respecting it first. And here I want to pause to speak directly to you. If this message is striking a chord in your life, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments which country you're watching from, because I love seeing how this community reaches so many corners of the world. And I also want you to write a phrase declaring your decision to care for yourself through boundaries. Something like, "My boundaries are my peace." That phrase won't just remind you of your right to protect yourself, it will also inspire others who read your comment. Because in the end, setting boundaries isn't about closing doors, it's about opening space for what you truly want in your life. And when you do it without guilt, you discover that self-love grows stronger, dignity is restored, and serenity begins to feel like home. Number 4. Friendship with your changing body. The body in old age is like that old friend who's been with you through it all. Your joys, your excesses, your sleepless nights, your battles. And like any longtime friend, sometimes it complains, tires, wrinkles, and slows down. The problem is, we often treat it like an enemy. We criticize it, despise it, punish it with impossible diets, or neglect it altogether. But tell me, how can self-love hold up if your relationship with your body is constant rejection? When I was just past 30, I remember injuring my knee while running. The frustration I felt was huge because my body no longer responded the way it used to. At that moment, a doctor told me something I've never forgotten. The body isn't a machine you repair, it's a companion you need to learn to listen to. That phrase shifted my perspective. From then on, I understood that the body isn't conquered with force, it's accompanied with patience. Today, I want to invite you to make peace with your body, not out of resignation, but out of friendship. And that begins with small acts of kindness, staying hydrated, resting when it's time, moving gently each day, checking on your health without fear or obsession. Here, the Stoic pillar of temperance comes into play. Balance, rhythm, and consistency. Because it's not about running marathons or getting back the body you had at 20, but about keeping it strong and flexible enough to carry you through what truly matters. Let me suggest a simple practice. Every morning, before criticizing yourself in the mirror, thank your body out loud for something specific. It could be, "Thank you for holding me up on yesterday's walk. Thank you for these eyes that still let me read." Or, "Thank you for these lungs that give me air each day." It sounds simple, but it radically changes the relationship. Let me share a short story to illustrate this. There was once a gardener who pruned his trees harshly until one day a tree broke and withered. Then he realized pruning had to be done with care, respecting the tree's rhythm. From then on, his trees grew stronger and greener. Your body is the same. If you push it too hard or ignore it, it breaks. If you listen to it and walk alongside it, it flourishes in its own way. And yes, of course, there will be aches, ailments, and limitations. But if instead of going to war with them, you see them as reminders that life is still flowing through you, you'll discover a different kind of peace. Because in the end, your body is the only home you'll live in until your last day. And if you can make peace with that home, everything that follows will feel much lighter. True self-love isn't an abstract idea. It shows up in how you treat the body you have today, not the one you had yesterday or the one you idealize in your memories. So start speaking to it with kindness, listening to it with respect, and you'll see how, little by little, that friendship also transforms the way you see yourself and how you feel. Number 5. Chosen solitude. That nurtures. Solitude is one of the words that sparks the most fear in old age, and with reason. Many people reach this stage after widowhood, separations, children who have built their own lives, and friendships that faded over time. Unwanted solitude hurts, and I know this because I've seen it up close in many of the people I accompany. But there's another kind of solitude, one that can become a vast source of peace, creativity, and self-love. The key is learning to distinguish between the solitude that crushes you and the solitude that nourishes you. A few years ago, I came across a phrase in the book of Psalms that stuck with me. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green. Psalm 92:14. That idea struck me as powerful because it breaks the cliché that solitude in later life means decline. On the contrary, it can be fertile ground for a different kind of blossoming, from within. I want to suggest a simple ritual to transform your relationship with silence and with yourself. Set aside 15 minutes a day in a corner you feel is yours. Sit without TV, without your phone, without distractions, and dedicate that time to 3 things: breathing deeply, contemplating what you have here and now, and giving thanks. You don't need long prayers or complicated meditations, just that small daily space where you remind yourself that being with yourself is not a punishment, but a privilege. I've seen how this practice changes the mood of people who once feared being alone. A 68-year-old woman told me that at first she felt strange, even anxious, but little by little she began to look forward to that moment of the day like someone looks forward to coffee with a friend. And that's exactly what it is, a meeting with yourself. To help you picture it, let me guide you with a mental image. Imagine that within you there's a secret room, cozy, with a lamp lit and a comfortable chair. That room is your inner space. Every time you choose nourishing solitude, you step inside. You can sit, rest, reflect on your day, and remember that you are not incomplete, you are whole. And when the noise of the world becomes unbearable, that inner room will be your safe refuge. Now, this isn't about locking yourself away or rejecting others. Nourishing solitude doesn't isolate you. It strengthens you, so later you can share from a place of calm. If you learn to enjoy your own company, you'll also be able to choose your external company better, not out of desperate need, but out of affinity and joy. So the next time silence makes you uncomfortable, remember this. Solitude isn't always emptiness. It can be a garden, it can be an altar, it can be rest. And when you choose it consciously, it becomes one of the deepest sources of self-love in old age. Number 6. Laughing at yourself with kindness. One of the things we tend to lose with age, besides agility and eyesight, is the ability to laugh at ourselves. And yet, it's one of the most powerful acts of self-love there is. Laughter has a liberating effect. It takes the drama out of the inevitable, lightens the weight of mistakes, and softens the changes in the body. Because let's be honest, aging brings situations that could be a tragedy or a comedy, depending on how you choose to see them. I remember one day I put my reading glasses on top of my head, then spent 20 minutes searching the whole house for them. I got annoyed, frustrated, until I walked past a mirror and saw them there, like a ridiculous crown. And instead of cursing my memory, I burst out laughing. That laugh healed me more than any sermon about patience ever could, because it reminded me that I'm still human, imperfect, and, luckily, still able to laugh at my own clumsiness. I want to suggest a simple exercise. Every time you stumble, whether in something big or small, try to retell it as if you were the narrator of a light-hearted comedy. For example, instead of saying, "I'm a mess, I'm useless," say, "Today, I star in the scene of the grandma who confuses the on button with the off button and leaves the whole family in the dark." That shift in perspective doesn't erase the mistake, but it makes it manageable, even endearing. Here's where modern psychology backs us up. When you can laugh at yourself with kindness, you reduce destructive self-criticism and strengthen self-compassion. In practice, that means less anxiety, less guilt, and more ability to enjoy the everyday. Another idea is to keep a small, graceful slip-ups journal. Not to punish yourself, but to collect those moments that, when you reread them, make you smile. Imagine yourself a few months from now, reading your own anecdotes and laughing as if they were funny stories told around the table. That journal becomes a homemade medicine against rigidity and excessive seriousness. I'm not telling you to ignore problems or live in constant laughter. Humor doesn't erase pain, but it makes it more livable. Laughing at yourself with kindness is a way of reminding yourself that you are bigger than your slip-ups, your wrinkles, and your falls. So next time you trip over your own words, forget your keys, or get startled by your reflection in the mirror, choose laughter. Laugh not to mock yourself, but to caress yourself with a smile. Because in that simple gesture, you give yourself back dignity and tenderness. And believe me, few things strengthen self-love in old age like that lightness that turns stumbles into cherished stories. Number 7. Late purpose and micro-missions. We've been sold the idea that life purpose is something you discover in youth, and afterward all that's left is either to fulfill it or resign yourself. As if after 60, everything boils down to waiting for the end. But let me tell you something. That idea is false and dangerous. Purpose isn't a monumental event revealed once in a lifetime. It's a direction you can redefine as many times as you want. And in old age, purpose doesn't need to be grand or epic. It just needs to make sense to you and nourish your spirit. Let me tell you about a woman I met at 70. She had spent her whole life devoted to her family and never had the chance to study. One day she decided to start teaching her adult neighbors how to read. She didn't do it to appear in a newspaper, to earn money, or to prove anything. She did it because she felt she still had something useful to give. Her weekly micro-mission was to give a couple of lessons in her living room. Over time, that small action transformed her entire street. Her neighbors not only learned to read, they also regained confidence. That woman found a late purpose that filled her with vitality. Stoicism speaks of courage as a fundamental pillar, doing what is right even when it's uncomfortable. And what greater act of courage than to reinvent your sense of life when many expect you to simply resign? Courage here isn't about crossing oceans or conquering mountains, but daring to ask yourself, what can I give today, from who I am and from what I have? I want to suggest a simple map. Draw 3 circles. In the first, write down the talents you still have, those skills that are part of you. In the second, note the needs you see around you, in your family, your community, your neighborhood, and in the third, your limits of energy and time. There, in the intersection of the 3, lies your micro-mission. It might be keeping someone company in their solitude, sharing a craft, tending a plant, writing your memoirs, teaching a skill. The size doesn't matter. What matters is authenticity. Some have told me, but I don't have the strength anymore. And I respond, you don't need strength to change the whole world. A single spark is enough to light your home, your street, or your own heart. Each micro-mission is a reminder that your life still has direction. And don't forget, purpose isn't measured in applause. It's measured in the peace with which you lay your head on the pillow at the end of the day. When you know you gave your energy to something worthwhile, even if it was small, you feel a deep satisfaction that no external circumstance can take away. So stop waiting for grand revelations. Start designing your micro-missions, small actions aligned with who you are and where you are now. Because late purpose isn't smaller or less worthy. It's actually the most beautiful proof that it's never too late to bloom with meaning. Number 8, outer order for inner peace. Look around you right now. How's your home? Full of things you don't even use anymore, drawers hiding objects you've forgotten, corners that feel like museums of the past. Let me be direct. External clutter is a reflection of what's happening inside you. And at the same time, it's a silent trap that chips away at your peace. Every out-of-place object is like a tiny thief of energy, stealing calm without you noticing. When I accompanied a 75-year-old woman through a process of change, the first thing I noticed was that she lived surrounded by stuff. Clothes from decades ago, piles of papers, broken ornaments, furniture that barely left room to move. She confessed that she felt a constant weight in her chest, and could hardly relax in her own living room. I suggested she start with the simplest step, a single drawer. We called it the honest drawer. In it, she decided what stayed because it still served a purpose, and what left with gratitude. That small gesture opened a huge door. Within 2 months, her house could breathe, and so could she. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's essential, on what truly matters. An external order is a concrete way to practice it. It's not about living like a monk with no belongings, but about keeping what you truly need and what brings you serenity. The rest is just noise. I want to propose a gentle method. Choose one small area per week, a drawer, a shelf, a box. Ask yourself, do I use this? Does it serve me? Does it bring me joy or peace? If the answer is no, thank it and let it go. You don't need to empty your whole house in a weekend or do a radical purge. What matters is consistency. Think of it like a river. When large stones block it, the water stagnates and starts to smell. But when you remove those stones, the water flows clear and light. Your home is like that river. If you clear what blocks it, your life flows more easily. And believe me, that outer peace is also felt in your mind and heart. What's interesting is that when you organize the outside, you start to organize the inside. Suddenly it becomes easier to set boundaries, make decisions, and rest. Because the physical environment isn't neutral. It either nudges you toward calm or toward anxiety. So don't see it as a heavy chore. See it as a gift to yourself. Every object you release is one less stone you carry, one more space to breathe, one more corner opening up for peace. And when your home becomes a kind space, you'll find that being with yourself no longer feels like a burden. It feels like coming back to a home that truly welcomes you. Number 9, the emotional economy of your attention. If there's one form of wealth that becomes more valuable than money in old age, it's your attention. What you watch, what you listen to, what you feed your mind with, that's what shapes your inner world. The problem is that we often give away our attention as if it cost nothing, to news channels that only sow fear, to conversations that drain us, to screens that trap us in useless comparisons. And then at the end of the day, you wonder why you feel tired, anxious, or discouraged. The answer lies in how you spend your attention. I remember a time when I fell into the trap of checking the news every hour. I justified it by saying it was important to stay informed. But what was really happening was that I ended up with a heavy heart, full of worries I couldn't solve. One day I decided to run an experiment, an entire week without news or drama-filled social media. The change was so clear that I wondered why it had taken me so long to see it. I had more energy, a better mood, and I even slept better. That was the moment I realized attention is like a budget. If you waste it, you end up in emotional deficit. Stoicism teaches us that the only thing we truly control is our choices. You can't control the news of the world, but you can choose how much time and energy you give it. That's emotional economy, deciding where to invest your attention and where not to. Here's a practical exercise I want to suggest. Make 2 lists. The first, it nourishes me. The second, it drains me. Write down activities, people, and content. Then look at your balance. If you spend more hours on what drains you than on what nourishes you, there's your explanation for your inner fatigue. After that, create a gradual reduction plan. 5 minutes less of news, a shorter call with the person who always complains, a little more time with music or reading that inspires you. Small adjustments that, over time, add up to a huge change. Picture your attention as an oil lamp. If you shine it on the negative all day, the oil burns out and you're left in darkness. But if you choose to light up what gives you meaning, the oil lasts longer, and the light you project is warmer. That metaphor helps me remember this isn't about isolating yourself from reality, but about wisely choosing where to place the light of your awareness. Let me leave you with an uncomfortable question. What are you giving your attention to that doesn't deserve so much of you? If you can find the answer and dare to adjust even a little, you'll feel yourself regaining energy and calm. Because your attention is your treasure, and managing it with care is one of the deepest acts of self-love in this stage of life. Number 10, closing cycles and forgiving yourself. There are wounds we carry for decades, words we said but didn't mean, decisions we now question, mistakes that still haunt us like ghosts. And the worst part is that, with time, those memories don't always soften. Sometimes they harden like stones in the heart. How can you love yourself in old age if you're still carrying old guilt? This is where an essential act of self-love comes in, learning to close cycles and forgive yourself. I remember the story of a man I met in a workshop. He was 73 and still cried when talking about an argument with his father that was never resolved, even though his father had died more than 40 years earlier. That wound was still open, stealing his peace. When we did an exercise of writing a letter that would never be sent, he was finally able to put into words what he had kept inside all his life. After reading it softly, he told me, "It feels like I've taken a stone off my back." That gesture didn't change the past, but it changed his present. I want to suggest that same ritual to you. Write a letter to whoever still lives in your memory with pain. It doesn't matter if they're no longer in this world, if you've lost contact, or if you'll never send it. Write what you've been holding inside without censorship. Then, burn the letter or store it in a closed drawer as a symbol that you're choosing to let go. It's not forgetting, it's releasing. And forgiveness is also with yourself. How many times have you told yourself, "I should have done more, I was foolish to trust, I wasted too much time"? That voice is cruel. Here I invite you to remember an image. A watchmaker adjusting a tiny piece in an old clock, and suddenly the whole mechanism works again. In the same way, a small act of forgiveness toward yourself can unlock an entire life. The Bible says it with a force that always moves me. "You will hurl all our sins into the depths of the sea." Micah 7:19. If even the divine can let go of guilt, why wouldn't you give yourself the same chance? Stoicism also reminds us that the only real thing is the present. The past is no longer under your control. Clinging to it only robs you of life now. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean approving your mistakes. It means deciding that you don't deserve to keep punishing yourself for them until your last day. Ask yourself this: what cycle do I need to close today in order to breathe more freely? The answer may hurt, but it may also be the key to your freedom. Because closing cycles and forgiving yourself doesn't erase your story, but it transforms the way you carry it. And that change feels like finally putting down a weight that wouldn't let you walk. Number 11. Facing death without fear to love life. The very word death often makes people uncomfortable. Many prefer not to mention it, as if avoiding it could delay its arrival. But the truth is, death is there, silent, reminding us that everything we have is borrowed, even our own body. Now, what if instead of seeing it as an enemy, you saw it as a teacher? Because when you dare to face death, you discover that the only thing you truly have is the present. And that makes life infinitely more precious. Stoicism has a very clear practice. Memento mori, remember you will die. And far from being an invitation to pessimism, it's a reminder to focus on what's essential. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote that death is part of nature, just like youth or old age, and that accepting it with serenity allows us to live more truthfully. When I first read that, I admit it unsettled me. I was in my 20s and it felt like a dark idea. But now, with time, I understand it was one of the brightest pieces of wisdom I ever received. I want to invite you to do something many people avoid. Prepare for your departure, not out of fear, but out of love. Put your documents in order, clarify your medical wishes, decide what should happen with your belongings. Talk with your family about those uncomfortable topics. It may seem harsh, but in reality, it's an act of love. Giving clarity to others is also giving peace to yourself. At the same time, let this reminder of finitude push you to live the everyday with more intensity. Savor your coffee slowly. Give your full attention to a conversation. Dare to say what you've been holding back. When you know time is limited, every moment becomes a treasure. Here's a simple visualization. Imagine your future self, 10 years from now, coming to visit you today and saying, "Thank you for the courage you had not to keep postponing." What decisions would that person thank you for? That small reflection can help you focus on what truly matters now, not tomorrow. The Bible also speaks about this. In Ecclesiastes, we are reminded, "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart." Ecclesiastes 7:2. It's a call not to run away from death, but to integrate it as a natural part of existence. Facing death without fear is, at its core, a way to reconcile with life. Because when you accept that the finish line is there, you stop chasing things that don't matter and begin to nurture what does: your relationships, your peace, your dignity. And that, believe me, is one of the deepest acts of self-love you can give yourself in old age. Number 12. Wise friendships and a small community. As the years go by, you realize you don't need to be surrounded by lots of people to feel you have company. In fact, at a certain age, what weighs most isn't the lack of company, but the wrong company, the kind that drains your energy, always brings problems, or only shows up when they need something from you. Self-love also shows up in your ability to choose more carefully who you share your time with, because at this point, your time is the most valuable thing you have. I've seen many older adults stay stuck in social ties out of sheer habit, even though they no longer offer anything. But when they dare to let go of empty bonds, the possibility opens to build a small but nourishing community. You don't need 20 friends. 2 or 3 who listen to you, respect you, and share something more than daily complaints are enough. Here's something concrete. Create a small ritual with those friendships that truly add to your life. It could be a little book club at home where you meet each week to discuss a chapter, or an afternoon tea with deep questions like, "What did I learn this week? What am I grateful for today? What would I like to let go of?" What matters isn't the activity itself, but the space it creates for meaningful conversation. I remember a 78-year-old man who told me his life changed when he started meeting 2 friends on Friday afternoons. At first, they only talked about soccer and politics, but little by little they opened up about their fears, their faith, and their most intimate memories. He told me, "I feel more alive in those 2 hours than in the whole week." That's the power of a small community. It gives life back. Stoicism underscores the importance of fellowship, of seeing ourselves as part of a larger network. But that network doesn't have to be huge. It just needs to be authentic. Justice comes in here too. Give your time and energy to those who truly value it, and withdraw it from those who waste it. Ask yourself, who are the 3 people I want to share my next decade with? Don't think about quantity, think quality. And if you don't have clear names yet, don't worry. Start by cultivating your own presence, because when you become kind company for yourself, you attract friendships that reflect that same energy. A small, wise community is a mirror. It reminds you that you're not alone, that you're still valuable, and that you still have much to give and receive. And believe me, few things nourish self-love in old age like sitting at the table with people who don't just talk at you, they feed your soul. Number 13. Slow learning and gentle curiosity. There's a common idea that says learning after a certain age is pointless, that the brain shuts down, that memory fades, that it's too late. But nothing could be further from the truth. Learning in old age isn't an academic obligation, it's an act of dignity and self-love. Because every time you allow yourself to discover something new, you prove that your spirit is still awake. When I was young, I was obsessed with learning fast, with taking in too much. But over the years, I realized that what matters isn't speed, it's depth. Today, I enjoy reading a paragraph slowly, underlining, writing my reflections in the margins, much more than racing through pages without keeping anything. That's slow learning, moving forward without haste, but with meaning. Stoicism reminds us that the only thing we truly control is our present effort. So it doesn't matter if you learn more slowly than before. What matters is that you keep planting knowledge in your daily life. That act itself is already a victory. I want to suggest a simple method I call layered learning. Imagine what you learn is like an onion. Each day you add a small, steady layer. You might read 2 pages of a book, learn a new word, try a memory exercise, or listen to a talk. It may not seem like much, but over months, those layers turn into solid, lasting knowledge. To illustrate this, I like to recall the story of a potter I met on a trip. He had spent years perfecting the same clay cup. When I asked why he didn't make new models, he said, "Because in each repetition I discover a different detail." That phrase stayed with me. True learning isn't about accumulating a lot, but about looking more closely. And learning at this age isn't only about exercising memory, it's also about adding spark to your days. A 72-year-old woman told me she started taking singing lessons just for fun, and every time she practiced, she felt her spirit grow younger. Gentle curiosity is medicine for the soul. It reminds you there are still surprises waiting for you. Ask yourself, what small subject sparks my curiosity right now? Don't look for grand courses or ambitious goals. Start with something simple: a book, a workshop, a practice. Consistency and calm will do the rest. Because in the end, learning slowly doesn't mean learning less. It means learning better. And that gentle curiosity is one of the most beautiful ways of telling yourself, "I'm still alive, still growing, still blooming." Number 14, serving without draining yourself. In old age, many people feel their worth lies only in what they give to others: caring for grandchildren, attending to adult children, being available for family or even for the community. Serving is noble, of course, but the problem comes when that service turns into a way of exhausting yourself until you're empty. Loving others cannot mean forgetting yourself. I've accompanied many older adults who feel used, even if they never say it out loud. A 69-year-old woman once confessed to me that she spent more time solving her children's problems than caring for her own health. When I asked what would happen if she got sick, she answered with an uncomfortable silence. That silence is common. We give until the body sends us the bill. Stoicism reminds us of the pillar of justice, giving what is due, and that includes giving to others from a place of balance, not from guilt or eternal obligation. If you serve from abundance, your help is genuine. But if you serve from exhaustion, your help becomes a burden for both you and them. I want to suggest a clear practice. Before saying yes to a request, ask yourself 3 things. Do I truly have the energy for this? Am I doing it out of love or out of guilt? Can I set a limit of time or conditions? If the answers show that saying yes will leave you empty, then the just response is no. Here's a concrete example. I know a 75-year-old man who volunteers at a community kitchen. He goes twice a week, just 2 hours each time. That time fills him with joy, but the rest of the week he dedicates to himself and his family. He found balance. He serves, but doesn't deplete himself. The Bible also sheds light on this point. Each one should give what they have decided in their heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. 2 Corinthians 9:7. Notice, give with joy, not with guilt or resentment. That's the key. Service must spring from a full heart, not an exhausted life. Ask yourself honestly, am I serving from abundance or from depletion? If you discover the answer is the latter, it's time to adjust. Because self-love also means recognizing that you can't save everyone, and that your well-being is sacred. In the end, serving without draining yourself is like lighting a lamp. If the wick is cared for and the oil is full, it shines brightly. But if you neglect it and let it burn out, there will be no light, for you or for anyone else. Serve, yes, but with balance. That is the wisest way to give and to love yourself in old age. Number 15. Small daily rituals that truly last. Self-love isn't built on grand speeches, but on small habits repeated day after day until they become part of you. Many older adults feel frustrated because they try drastic changes they can't maintain. But the truth is, you don't need to transform your life all at once. Just choose a few simple, steady rituals that remind you each day that you are worthy of your own care. I discovered this during a time when I was trying to take on too much: half-hour meditations, complicated workout routines, impossible meal plans. The result? I quit everything after a short while, until I understood that less is more. I started with 5 minutes of conscious breathing each morning and 2 gratitude phrases before bed. That was it, and to my surprise, those minimal gestures began changing my mood in ways nothing big ever had. I want to suggest your own daily self-love kit. It might include 3 things in the morning and 3 at night. In the morning, a glass of water as soon as you wake up, 2 deep breaths, and a kind thought toward yourself. At night, write down 2 sentences of gratitude. Move your body gently, even just stretching arms and legs, and say a short prayer or intention. Nothing complicated, nothing heavy. But each gesture, repeated day after day, becomes an anchor. Stoicism highlights the value of daily exercises, reviewing what you did, what you felt, what you can improve, not with guilt, but with serenity. Seneca said that at the end of the day, he asked himself what he had done well, what he had done poorly, and how he could correct it. You can do the same with tenderness, not as an exam, but as a gift of clarity. To help fix this idea in your mind, picture a lamp in your home. Each morning, you light that lamp with your small rituals, and each night, you light it again to close the day. No matter what happens outside, that lamp reminds you there is a home within you that stays illuminated. Make yourself a promise. Don't chase perfection, chase consistency. A simple ritual done with love has more power than a complex plan abandoned after a week. And if one day you slip, it's okay. Just pick it back up the next day. The key is to sustain yourself with kindness, not with a whip. Because in the end, small daily rituals are the most concrete way of telling yourself, I matter, I take care of myself, I respect myself. And with that, you close the circle of everything we've talked about. Self-love in old age isn't theory, it's practice. And it always begins with a small gesture, repeated with consistency and tenderness. We've walked together through 15 steps of practical wisdom, all with the same destination, reminding you that loving yourself in old age is not a luxury or a nice idea, but a vital necessity. We talked about breaking the myth that it's too late, about caring for the voice you use to speak to yourself, about setting boundaries without guilt, about making peace with your body, about enjoying chosen solitude, about laughing at yourself with kindness, about discovering micro-missions that give you purpose, about bringing order to your surroundings, about guarding your attention as the treasure it is, about closing cycles and forgiving yourself, about facing death without fear, about choosing wise friendships, about learning with calm, about serving with balance, and finally, about sustaining small daily rituals that truly last. Each chapter was a reminder that it's never too late to bloom. I want to thank you from the heart for staying until the end of this talk. That alone says so much about you, that you are committed to yourself, to your peace, and to your dignity. My name is Gabriel, and this channel, The Stoic Garden, exists precisely to accompany you on this path of wisdom, serenity, and self-love. Here, we don't talk about magic formulas or empty promises, but about real practices that can transform your life from the inside out. Now I'd like to ask you for something special. Tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. It brings me so much joy to see how this community reaches so many places around the world. And also write a powerful phrase that seals what we've learned today. I suggest this one: I live with wisdom. Leave it in the comments so it stays engraved in your heart and inspires others who read it. Share this video with a sister, a friend, or someone close to you. You never know when a word might be the relief someone else needs to hear. Truly, that small gesture could change someone's entire day. Thank you once again for being here with me. On screen now, you'll see 2 videos I invite you to choose from to keep going deeper on this journey of practical wisdom. Pick the one that speaks to you most and continue cultivating here in the Stoic Garden, the serene and fulfilling life you deserve.